Great. Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate it. Happy to be here tonight. Hopefully, everybody can see and hear everything. Give me a thumbs up if everything's on the screen. Great. Good to be here. And as I was telling Shelby and et al. Who were on before, tonight's not going to be in-depth science. It's going to be a lot of practical applications to controlling the calving season, not only why, but also how. And before we really jump into the methods, the tools that we use to control the calving season, we probably ought to look at what in the world does our current calving season look like. If you look at the USDA NOMS survey data from 2017, you'll see that about 60% of the beef cattle producers in the United States have no set calving season. Okay. Here in the Southeast, we are quite a bit higher than that. I'm close to 65%. Out in Wyoming, out in Idaho, out in Kansas, where Dr. Johnson's at, they're probably running a little bit lower numbers than this, but based on the several thousand surveys, about 60% of our producers do not have a controlled breeding and calving season. And so if you're not controlling the season, then it's really random. And so basically, folks here get some property, either inherit it, rent it, buy it. Well, buying it would be pretty tough these days, right? But they get some property and they decide that they're going to run cattle. So they get them some cows. They grab a bull. I'm giving them credit here for crossbreeding. But they grab a bull and they just let that rascal run with the cows year round. And when they need some money, or when they think the calves get big enough, they haul them to the stockyards. And that is about 65% of the folks that I deal with in Kentucky, and about 60% in general across the United States. And so if you think about random, okay, random a lot of times is associated with a bell-shaped curve, right? And so there is a bell-shaped curve around this. And so in that same survey, they asked the producers how many months did their cows calve in. And you'll see that about 60% of them calve actually over a 4 month window. Okay. And so a majority of the cows do calve in a window that we actually can have some impact on. But how does this look in a practical situation when you run out on a farm and say, my job is to go and help producers solve problems. Okay. And so from 2013 to 2021, we ran a program called the Farm Program, where we went out on 167 farms in Kentucky and Tennessee, and we examined their current protocols, uh, looked at their production plans and their production goals, and we helped them alter their production to meet their goals. And this is one of the farms that I went on. Is I just picked one at random, really. And this is a result of what I saw about 60% of the time when I went on these farms. These cattle producers' cows calved over about a 365-day window. And in this situation, he had 27 cows. Six of them, for some reason, didn't calve. They calved in nearly every month of the year. Five of the calves died. He weaned 16 total calves. His pounds of calf marketed, I have weaned down here, but he didn't weigh them at weaning, but his pounds of calf marketed per cow exposed was only 315 pounds. And so really this is the result. This is what we see when we just let things occur at random. And so, what we want to do, obviously, is to figure out a little bit better plan. Now, when you look at that plan, okay, and I'll jump back up there for just a second. When you look at that plan, okay, what you're going to notice is that not only are they spread out in weight, okay, because they're born over a 340-day window. But how in the world are you going to market these rascals? Well, the answer is you're going to market singles, right? And so if you're marketing a bunch of singles, you're going to be marketing the animals at the lowest possible market value. And this data collected by Greg Hallich and Kenny Burdine here at the University of Kentucky looked at several tens of thousands of marketings at the Bluegrass Stockyards over a 7 year period. And their goal was to examine the impact of lot size. And every dot here, okay, is five cattle. So this is a single. That's five, that's 10, that's 15, and so forth. And so the difference between selling a single and selling five light calves in our market over a 7 year period was $11 a hundredweight. Cattle didn't look different. Cattle didn't weigh different. The only thing they did was they're able to put five together at a single time. And so certainly that previous situation we just looked at, not only are they're going to have tremendous issues in their ability to produce cattle, but also are going to have reduced market value for those calves. So we saw what our calving season looks like. What should it look like? Where should we be looking? Where should we be going? And the main question you really want to ask yourself is, how do you market? Because your reproduction plan should mirror your marketing plan. If it doesn't, then you need to change your reproductive plan. So if you're selling feeder calves, which is what 80% of the cattle in the United States are sold as, if you're selling feeder calves, you definitely need a controlled breeding and calving season. But if you're selling freezer beef and let's say you're a small producer selling freezer beef and you need to spread out your supply, or sometimes the seed stock have a little bit different, or the show ring cattle have a little bit different plan for the reproductive program, first figure out what you're going to market and then figure out your reproductive program. For most of us, it's feeder calves. And for our feeder calves, we want to control the breeding and calving season. There's quite a bit of research on this, but this is just one that I decided to highlight here. But this work by Parker et al. Looked at an economic analysis of about 400 ranches in the Southwest. The goal of this research was to identify the relationship between the length of the calving season and the economic impact of that breeding season length. In that 394 ranches, there are multiple ranches that either had long, extended 365-day windows down to as short as 70 days. And what these researchers noticed was there was a positive relationship between the number of days of the breeding season and the cost of production. So the longer the calving season, the higher the cost of production. As a matter of fact, cost increased per 100 pounds of calf a nickel a head a day of the breeding season. So for every day longer, it costs a nickel per 100 pounds, okay, or 25 cents on a 5 weight calf, right, per day of the extended breeding season. In addition to that, the pounds of calf weaned per year decreased 0.158 pounds per day. What's this mean? Year-round calvers sold 46 fewer pounds of calf per cow per year at a cost of $14 more a hundredweight. So you're looking at $70 more production cost of production for 46 fewer pounds of beef. Not necessarily the perfect business relationship. Tom Troxel and Brett Barnum, several years ago, this is about 20 years ago now, um, took some of the principles that we're going to talk about tonight and they applied it to 6 farms that were all year-round calvers. And it took them a little over 3 years to get all this done. There was really one of the 6 farms took 5, everybody else took 3. And Tom's goal for this work was to identify the production and economic changes associated with moving from an uncontrolled to a controlled calving season. And so after the end of the project, what they observed was that a pretty significant decrease in the length of the calving season, and a significant change in the percent of cows calving when desired. Now, we would expect that, right? One of the arguments that I get quite a bit is that, well, if I just leave the bull in there a little bit longer, eventually all of my cows will calve. And that's not exactly the case, okay? And actually, there was no difference in the mature cow calving percentage in a controlled breeding season versus an uncontrolled breeding season. My mouse is a little too sensitive. The herd break evens, and this is so you take the weight of the calf and divide it by the cost of production. The herd break evens were 1/3 the specified cost per animal unit, and this is out of pocket costs per 1,000 pounds of mature cow calf pair was twice, and the income over specified costs was double. So it didn't cost them a dime to move from an uncontrolled to a controlled calving season. Instead, it made them money. And we'll have several more examples of this as we go through. If you look at all the standardized performance analysis data from Illinois, North Dakota State, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, if you want to be profitable in a feeder calf market, you need your cattle to calve in a 70-day window. You need greater than 90% of them to get pregnant. You need to lose fewer than 1 to 2% if you can hold it from birth to weaning so that about 88% or more of your cows can actually wean a calf. This is that same farm 2 years later. Okay, and so we maintained the 27 cows. I ended up replacing those six opens. In just 2 years, we shifted them from a 340-day window to a 49-day window. One cow did not calve, no calves died, and that could be luck, right? We didn't have a control group. That could be luck. And their pounds of calf marketed. Again, we didn't wean these calves to keep them the same. The pounds of calf marketed per cow exposed significantly increased because now we're in control. We're not allowing birth to occur at random. We're not allowing reproduction to occur at random. So how did we get there? How did we transform that farm from 340 days to 49 days? How did Tom and Brett change those cattle, those herds from 365 to 85? Well, the first thing we need to do is understand some of the problems, and then we figure out some tools that we can use to enhance our ability to get the cattle to reproduce, develop a plan and implement the plan, and then obviously stick to it. We're going to focus tonight on what are the tools that we can use. When I go onto a farm, and in particular those 167 farms that Dr. Reinhardt in Tennessee and I were on, there were 147 of them in Kentucky. What are the tools that we use to change reproductive rate in those cow herds? And one of the first things we did, when we go on a farm, is we go through the entire cow herd and we determine the reproductive status. Okay, and we utilize the basic tool of culling. Okay, cull and replace. And so we culled open cows. We culled cows that really were bred, but not in a timely fashion. And then we just culled bad cows. You would be amazed at how much better your herd gets when you cut the bottom 25% off. We implemented breeding soundness exams in all bulls 30 days before every breeding season. All bulls, every year, 30 days before every breeding season if they had to. We utilized estrus synchronization. Most of the work you're going to see tonight is going to be about using synchronization with natural service. 90% of beef cattle producers in the U.S. utilize bulls for breeding cows. And so we concentrate a lot on synchronization systems for natural service. And then less than 20% of our producers utilize pregnancy determination. And certainly we emphasize determining pregnancy and culling based upon pregnancy uh, status. So now I just want to jump into a few farms. And again, this is a problem solving situation. There's not a control in a lot of this. So one of my main jobs, and probably the job that I enjoy the most, is when I work with a county A&R agent on producers' farms to evaluate their programs and to help them implement a new plan to keep them and sustain them in beef production. And this is one of the first farms that I worked with. If it's in Washington County, I've been here 30 years. And I know Sandy and if John Hall's on here, they've been in it, at it as long as I have. But anyhow, this farm had 60 females. They used three bulls. They calved when I got in and we did the repro check. They were calving March through August. They weaned every calf on November the 1st. Okay, and that's even these August calves. And I asked them why in the Sam Hill they were weaning these August calves in November, and they just kind of shrugged their head and said that's the way we've always done it. And that's a pretty normal answer that we get. Okay, average weaning weight was pretty decent, 443, but they only marketed 42 calves out of 60 females the year before we got there, or the year that we did the repro check. This is what their calving distribution looked like. And it's really very similar to what we see nationally. Nationally, a 60% of the females calve in February, March, April, and May. And this producer wanted to calve in March and April, but they left the bull in there, and we have issues with endophyte and heat stress here. And so as cattle continue through the summer, conception rate plummets, and we have a real issue with getting cattle bred back because we're starting our breeding season somewhere here in May. And if you haven't got those cattle bred up by the end of June, they're really going to struggle getting pregnant. And so what we end up with this is this kind of trickle down theory of calving. Put this in tabular form. Okay, now March 15th is halfway through March, and there's 229 days from March 15th to November the 1st. Those calves weaned 563 pounds on average, for about a 2.5 pounds a day average daily gain. You can see what these other calves, what the calves born in the other months weighed. And so when I multiply over and add down, they had 18,614 pounds of weaned calf out of their 60 females. Again, they averaged 443 pounds, but remember, 18 cows didn't calve. And so when we put this on a pound of calf wean per cow exposed basis, they were way down in just barely over 300. Now, as I sit here and I look at this plan, they want to calve in March and April. First thing you really kind of gotta figure out is if they don't want to calve in the fall, then there's nothing really that we can do to these July and August calving cows. So we gave them trailer mycin. Okay. We replaced those four cows with four cows that are going to calve in March. Everything else we fed MGA to for 7 days before we turned the bull out. Now I want to be clear here that MGA is only approved for use in heifers and in synchronization of heifers. We use it here in cows. This farmer didn't particularly have great working facilities. That's not the case now. Kentucky, a lot of Kentucky producers have really good facilities now, but back then they didn't have great facilities, and that's what we were able to use. So these cows that calved in March and April, they got MGA from May 13th to the 19th. The bull went out on May 20th. These cows that calved in May we basically went 3 weeks after the last cow in May calved, fed them MGA for 7 days, moved them up to the breeding pasture. Same thing with these June calving cows. The last cow calved June the 9th. So at the end of June, she got the last day of June, she got MGA. Those four got MGA, and then they were moved over into the breeding pasture. So that was the plan. MGA for 7 days, turned the bull out. This is what happened after the first year. Okay. I left this the same on purpose. That actually went up, right? We had more calves born the 1st of March. But what I wanted to do in this table and the next table was show you the impact of just controlling when the cow calves on weaning weight and on the ability to produce pounds of calf weaned. Okay. This average was closer to 580 than it was 563, but I left this the same on purpose. So now when we multiply over and add down, we come up with 27,856 pounds compared to 18,614 pounds. Now you say, well, you did call and replace. I did. Okay. We replaced four. In the last slide, remember there were 15 cows that calved in the month of March. Now there's 35. Okay. So we still significantly shifted the calving season and significantly shifted our ability to produce pounds of calf. We did it one more year. Okay. So we did it 2 years in a row. Now we've got 85% or 46 of our cows calved in the month of March. 54 out of the 60 calved. When we multiply over and add down, now we've got 29,874. So 11,000 more pounds. And again, that these weights are actually higher. This was well over 32,000 actual pounds. But I wanted in this table, I wanted to keep this the same so that you didn't think it was a genetic effect. It's an age effect. We're controlling age. And also, look at the marketing power this producer now has. Before, he had two or three groups that he could put together. Now he's got a group of 23 steers and heifers. And depending on when these cows calved in April, he might be able to slip some of them in. So now he has real marketing power right on his own farm. How did we do it? Well, at that time and early on in my career here, I used a lot of MGA. Now we almost strictly use the cedar device. I'll use the MGA in heifers, but we use cedar device in most of our cows. And so we'll put the cedar in or start MGA on Monday, pull it out on a Monday just to give you the 7-day deal, turn the bull out the next day. Just to remind you, MGA is a synthetic progestin that was made back in the 50s and used initially to suppress heat in feedlot heifers. When fed at a half a milligram per head per day, it effectively gives a progestin-like activity or CO-like activity to the cow. And so they think they're having their short cycle or they think they're cycling. You remove the MGA from the feed, and the cow will come in heat over the next week or so. Okay. One thing about it, of course, if they're not eating it, it's not effective. And so you need to make sure that we have consistent intake. And usually it's 2 foot of bunk space. Or if you're trying to feed it in May here in the Southeast, when we got grass, a foot tall, you're going to have to be creative. The MGA is available in a number of different commercial forms. Here I've got pictured a pellet. You can buy the actual powder and have your feed mill mix it, but a very effective method. And again, it is approved for use in heifers for synchronization of estrus. The product we use mainly now and strictly in cows is the cedar device. And I'm sure all of you know what the cedar device is, but it is a T-shaped plastic device that's coated in 1.38 grams of progesterone. To put it in the cow, we insert it into this tube. We put some lube on, we put it in the anterior vagina, and the body fluids soak up the progesterone, and it effectively gives luteal concentrations of progesterone to the cow. Then when we pull the string, remove the cedar device, cows come in heat again over a 2 to 5 day window. Sometimes they'll stretch a little bit longer than that, but a cedar is an extremely effective, and I would say the most effective reproductive tool that we have besides preg checking. This is the results of a controlled trial that we ran here back in the early 2000s. Each farm had both treatments. So each farm had a control group and a treated group. about 2,000 cows again. Significant differences in pregnancy rate and significant differences in the percent of cows that calved in the first 30 days. Okay, this data is a little bit different than what Dr. Lamb in 2008 presented. But the real difference between Dr. Lamb's work and this work is that the pregnancy rate of my control group was significantly lower. Dr. Lamb's, the control group in his trial in 2008 were all running in the mid or low to mid 90s. Uh, that's just not, it's not possible in the Southeast in the spring. All this work was done in the spring. And so 80 to 85% is very normal for us. Actually, and there every now and then we dip quite a bit lower than that, depending on the heat. But this is very normal for us. This is a significant difference. We did run bull to cow ratios from as low as 1 to 23 up to 1 to 42. We stacked the deck in our favor and that every bull passed the BSE. Every bull was at least 2 years old and had service cows in the past, and every bull had at least a 35 centimeter scrotum. We did not see a difference in bull to cow ratio on pregnancy rate. So this 91% actually came from the bull in the 1 to 42. And as long as they pass the BSE and they're mature bulls, we stick somewhere in that 30 to 35 cow range for synchronization, and we've not really had too much trouble. Does this return any additional revenue? Small group of cows, 108, 54 of them got MGA. This is again in the early 2000s. MGA got 54 of them got MGA before the bull. 54 of them got corn and soybean meal before the bull. So the only difference in the feed additive was the MGA. 95% of this group got pregnant. 80% of that group got pregnant. 17, this group, the MGA group, calves 17 days earlier and they weighed 40 more pounds at weaning. Cost of MGA at that time was just $3 per head for the entire 7 days. And so our return, we weaned 31,000 pounds versus 24,000 pounds. And this is our current market average steer and heifer market price in Kentucky. Okay, it was 330. So if I multiply that by $3.30, divide that by 54, in today's market, we make about $400 more return per cow exposed. I've calculated this 100 times over the last 30 years, 25 or 6 since I've done this work. And it always, the worst that came out was $100 a cow. And I think all of us would like an additional $100 a cow. All of that work was whole herd feeding. What we started to do in the mid 2000s was we started working on what we call targeted reproduction. And so really what I came to the realization is that not every cow needs a seeder. And actually your early calving, mature cows and good flesh ain't broke. And if they ain't broke, there's no use trying to fix them. And so we just developed a plan where we really just target the tough breeders. And so here is just an example of some of that work. This guy had 150 cows that calved over a 120-day period. We put seeder devices in all the cows that calved in April and May, and every single 2-year-old, regardless of when they calved. We always consider 2-year-olds hard breeders. Turn the bull out for 70 days. We got 141 of them pregnant. 141. We got 113 of them to calve in the first 30 days. Our 2-year-olds did very well. 17 of the 25 calved in the first 30 days. 22 of the 25 calved overall. Again, no control group, but I know what the history of this farm was, and that we significantly impacted the reproductive potential of this farm using that targeted plan. While we were doing that, on farms, and again, a bunch of farms, putting these seeder devices in, we'd have a cow come in and the guy would say, oh, she just calved, 2 weeks ago. She calved 16 days ago, so forth. I would sleeve her. Uterus was involuted. we go ahead and put a cedar in her just to see what would happen. Okay. And I've got more data. I just got one of my favorite agents here made this table up. This is when we first did this back in 2013. Okay. There's just 8 cows here, but bear with me just a little bit. This guy is a February and March calver. So April and May are late calving cows for this guy. These cows, when this last one calved on April 29th, we put the cedar in on May 14th for 7 days, move them over to the breeding pasture. This cow calved the last day of May, of course. We put the cedars in on June 17th for 7 days, move them over to the breeding pasture. This is when they calved the next year. 7 of the 8 cows read the book, one didn't. But I can't hardly complain because she calved on a 365-day interval. Now, of course, he called her after this and we didn't have to worry about it. But we moved all 8 of his late calving cows up into his normal window. Okay. Utilizing that strategy and the targeted reproductive strategy, about 600 cows on 15 different farms. Again, these early cows, mature cows calving in the first 45 days of the calving season. We didn't do anything to. We just turned them out with the bull. What we consider the late calving cows. So these are April calving cows, April and well, very early May. We put the cedar in from on May 13th to May 19th. Turned them out with the bull on May 20th. 2-year olds. Okay, we had 68 of those. We treated every 2-year old like a hard breeder, put a cedar in them for 7 days. The very late calving cows, so these are cows that calved in the last month. We put a cedar in for 7 days, turned the bull out, and this is the results that we got on that 600 cows. Okay, so we really utilize this strategy quite a bit when I'm working with our producers, and you're going to see that demonstrated as we get into some of the other work. Just to add a few more numbers to the very late calving cows over project that we've just been kind of piddling with the last few years is we've had about 180 mature cows on 19 different locations that were in that 14 to 28 day range. And you can see those numbers that we had originally have stayed very consistent as we add numbers. So how do we utilize this? How do we develop strategies? This first farm I want to talk about, we came in March. Okay, and this guy wanted 2 seasons, one in March, February, or March, April, excuse me, and one September and October. And so we sold the bull, and he built a pen, bought another bull after he got the pen built to get ready for the May breeding. We held those for spring. We put a cedar device in those string and turned them out with the bull. We held all those for fall. These two, and we in these Octobers we put a cedar device in them for 7 days before we turned them out, and we fed these MGA for 7 days before we turned them out. Sold those 2 open cows. In this first year, we left the bull in for 90 days. This is what happened after the first year of that treatment. Okay, we got several of those cows to calve when we wanted them to. We had this one spring cow, and this is always the case in Kentucky. Okay, so that's 120 days from the first calf to the last calf in that season. Look how we tightened up the fall. Okay, so we rolled this cow down. We fed MGA to these gals, and again, this guy in this pasture didn't have tremendous working facilities, so we were stuck with feeding MGA there. In 2017, he bought 12 bred cows, but 3 of them weren't bred. And they came up down here as not calving, but everything else we got to calve in 2 very well-defined 50-day windows. Okay. He did end up having 2 open cows out of those 3. So there was a reason those rascals were at the stockyards. So with just a little bit of planning, a little bit of management. Now, also, we implemented great health programs. We implemented every bull passed the BSE, all those other things. But this is what you can do with a little bit of planning and a little bit of dedication. Another farm, this guy was calving over a 342-day window. We had one cow that calved in January and calved again in December. I came in March, and again we sold the bull. He wanted to hold everything to the fall and just have September and October calving. So she was pregnant. We held her, let her calve, and sold her, and sold the other December calf at weaning. Held those for fall, held those for fall. We did a really hard call. We sold six dun cows. His average mature weight was really high, 1,725 pounds. He bought two replacements. So then he wanted to AI, so we AI'd 12 head for the next year. Here's what the next year looked like. He had 13 cows. One of them was open. He ended up keeping this one. He added five replacement heifers. We synchronized and AI'd those 16 head. Okay, the two late calving cows. Man, that thing is sensitive. These two late calving cows. Sorry about that. We put a cedar in for 7 days before we turned them out with a bull. Notice that the number of cows that didn't calve decreased and the number of calves that died decreased. Okay, again, no control, but something to be observant of. This is what happened after 7 years. Okay, his average cow size decreased to 1275. We were culling hard, replacing hard. That's a 450-pound decrease in cow size. We also shifted and maintained a very tight breeding and calving window. Here, this one cow slipped out because she actually was pregnant there. We were doing 30-day preg checks, and she slipped that calf, and he had gotten a little cocky, left the bull in a little bit long, and so she got pregnant right before he pulled the bull out. His overall reproductive rate in his cow herd increased dramatically, and his ability to market calves increased dramatically. Here, he identified that he wanted to sell 7.5 and 7 weight cattle in the month of August, all on grass. He ended up this year selling 750 pounders at the 1st of June. Here's what happened to his efficiency, and I really just want you to focus on this number right here. Okay, over this period of time, he went from 311 pounds of calf wean per cow exposed to 561. Okay, and when we put it on a per cow exposed basis, we're just looking at efficiency. So the changes in his overall herd number is quantified or is adjusted for with that number. In addition to saving himself a ton and a half less feed, he was able to increase his total pounds of calf weaned, and you can see the value placed on that in today's market. Lastly, the last thing I want to talk about, and a super important tool that we can use besides synchronization, is we have to get the cattle pregnancy checked. And why in the world do we care about it? I mean, doesn't really matter, right? I mean, well, it does. And this is just an example. Just let's say, pretend we had a cow that calved last September. We exposed her to a bull, but we forgot to preg check her. She weaned that calf, or she's going to wean it this May. We forgot to preg check her, and she ended up open. We figured it out in September and October when she didn't calve. We decided, oh well, we've already put the money into her. Let's go ahead and we'll leave her in the breeding. Well, you expose her to breeding again. She gets pregnant. She calves and weans. 2 years between product. No business can afford that, and it's cheap and it's easy, and we cannot afford not to preg check. If you want the old school methods, rectal palpation and transrectal ultrasonography, contact your herd veterinarian, get them scheduled, get them out, and get it done. It's cheap, it's accurate, and it's worth every penny. Think about feeding that cow for 2 years before you get of return. Blood sampling, if you can't get a scheduling done or with your veterinarian, or you want to do it yourself, we've had blood sampling for pregnancy for many years. Okay, typically it doesn't matter where you get it from, whether the tail or the jugular, but get your blood sample. If you want to send it to a lab, there are hundreds of labs all throughout the country that you can send it to. Communicate with them, download the list of instructions, package it up, send it off, and usually you'll get the results in a day or two. Okay. Um, what these uh, tests do is they examine the presence of unique proteins that's made only by the placenta. It's very accurate after day 28 of pregnancy. The one kicker is it will last a little bit in the bloodstream, but typically this doesn't interfere with our blood testing in most situations. Recently, we've had two different shoot side tests. If you don't want to send it to a lab, that are available, the alerts and the prognostics. Okay, it's very accurate at day 28 and greater of pregnancy. They're available at Jeffers Valley Vet or really any supply. You'll also need a 3 ml purple top tube, needles and syringes, and it really is simple as pie. Okay, there are several videos that'll show you how to take a blood sample. Okay, take the blood sample, follow the instructions that are very clearly written on both of those tests, and it's very accurate and very cheap. I downloaded this last week or just took a shot. These are the alerts. Okay, for 25, you're looking at 140 bucks. This is on sale, obviously. Okay. Usually it's around 8, 9 bucks. These are quite a bit cheaper. You're going to need to buy the purple top tubes and the syringe and needle, but you're looking at about a $10 investment. The prognostics, okay. Usually they come with the purple top tubes and the blood kit or the needle and syringes. And so when you order those, you're going to get a little bit more. Um, Again, last week for a 6 count, they're about 10 bucks a pop. Very simple. Takes 15 minutes to 20 minutes after you take the test to get a positive result or negative result, whatever, but to get the result. And super, super simple. You can't get stage of pregnancy, but you can get whether or not they're pregnant. So to wrap it up, fit your repro plan to your marketing plan. And I could spend 2 hours just talking about that. But everything should revolve around how you're going to make money. What is your plan to make money? Once you decide how you're going to market your animals, create your reproduction plan, create your health plan, your nutrition plan, everything based upon how you're marketing your cattle. Second, if you're a feeder calf producer, loads of data, reams of data that demonstrate controlling the calving season is vital, absolutely necessary. And we have tools that you can use that have been available for actually decades in most cases that we just aren't implementing into our regular daily management plans. So use those tools, smart culling. Every bull gets a breeding soundness exam 30 days before every breeding season. Induce estrus. Don't wait for them to come into heat on their own. Induce estrus, particularly in your late calving cows and your 2-year-olds. Absolutely vital. And then to top it off, determine how successful you were. Do a pregnancy determination. If you get a stage, market your late calving cows or the ones that don't fit your window, and you're going to be able to get your breeding season shaped up, your cost of production's down, and your revenues maximal. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. That was really great, especially my neck of the woods, right? We're thinking about breeding season coming up already. So a lot of really great information there to think about. There are some questions. If you haven't had a chance to ask your question yet, please use the Q&A function. and we'll get started in on some of those questions that are in there. So the first one is the main reason the cost per hundredweight increase with length of breeding season due to the reduced amount of pounds produced?
The increase in the cost of production? I
Yes, so
can't
is
see their chat. Can
it's
you
in
read it
the
again?
it's in the Q&A box at the bottom. But it is the main reason cost per hundredweight increased with length of breeding season due to the reduced amount of pounds produced.
Now, the main reason of the increase in the cost of production is you you don't have animals on a schedule, and so it's very difficult to apply your nutrients and your management techniques and your labor on that schedule. So basically, the way I think about it is in Kentucky, if you like to calve every year, you like to work cattle every day because you're basically creating an individual production plan for each month. And we have a very difficult time feeding cows that are in the middle of their pregnancy and cows that are in the middle of lactation efficiently. And so in most of the case, you end up overfeeding, overworking, and over vaccinate. It's usually you got to vaccinate multiple times if you want to hit all the windows. And so costs of production skyrocket when everything's not on a schedule where you can adequately plan.
That was great, thanks. So there is a couple questions that seem like they're maybe from some extension educators asking about how they give this information to more experienced producers to help to get them to implement this and understand the importance that it has from both the data side but also the relevance to their production.
The best way that I have found to get producers to do it is to work with them and show them. And that is rough, and it's rough on extension services. Prior to COVID, I averaged one farm visit per day of employment. Okay. And we all had a little break there for a couple of years where we weren't able to get out much, but I'm trying to catch back up. But the most effective thing for me is when I work with agents and set up a demonstration herd in their county, and we have a field day where we show them this is where we're at, and then we bring them in, this is what we're doing, and then we show them the end result. And that has been by far and away the most effective way that I've been able to move the needle. And then when I present data, and I just picked and choose a few farms here, but when I show the data here, and there's almost always someone in the audience that I've worked with now, that really helps limit some of the demonstrations. But that Kentuckians may be different than everybody else, but we just got to get out and show them, honestly. And that has cost our extension service a lot of money for me traveling all over the state. But that's what we do. That's what I do. That's not a very good answer, but that's the state of the beef producers in Kentucky.
No, I think that's a great answer. I think it's always great when you can show them something more than just data, as well as have another producer who's implemented some of those things be able to share their experience and the benefits that they've gotten. So I think that was great. So next question is, how quickly after calving can you put the seeders in?
See, that's a trick question. Is what the bag says and what I do is completely different. I don't hesitate to put them in at 2 weeks after calving. I have had significant success doing that. I do not recommend anything earlier than that. I've palpated a ton of cows 2 weeks after calving. Most of them have involuted the uterus by then. And I have had, I mean, I've got several hundred cows where we've gone 14 to 28 days after calving and significantly shifted when they calve the next year. Okay, so pregnancy rate doesn't matter that much. Obviously, we want high pregnancy rates, but when they calve and if they wean is what matters. And so that calving in the first 30 days is really where I try to focus.
Can you touch a little bit on the cost of the MGA type protocols?
Yeah, so for 7 days of MGA right now, you're looking at around $10, $10 a head, plus or minus a little, depends on your source. If you have your local feed mill, mix it. So it'll be, I really recommend 2 to 2.5 pounds a head a day as your total intake. And so you'll have a half a milligram of the powder in that 2 to 2.5 pounds. We have pellets here, we have range cubes, we have a lot of different forms, and the price varies by form, but it's usually somewhere between nine and $11 to $12.
Next one, I think it's referring to some of the protocols you use, but just confirming the sync protocol is a 7 day.
Yep,
Okay.
7 days. The longer you expose cows to progestins, the lower the fertility. And I don't want to go any longer than 7 days. Um, there's tons of data on that too, but 7 days and turn the bull out.
Can you talk on? There's a question asking about does the cedar do anything to bring anestrus cows in, or is a shot of cisterellin or GnRH advisable?
What an awesome question. People don't know this, but I was actually involved in Harold Hayes' original FDA approval work back in 1990. Cedars were originally approved to stimulate estrus in anestrus cows. Carol Fike showed that in as a result of that work. That was a multi-state work. Dr. Lamb also had some work. Yeah, the cedar device, that is the reason to use the cedar device. I personally don't find GnRH very effective in beef cows. Um, it can work if you happen to have a follicle greater than 9 to 10 millimeters and you give her a shot of GnRH, you're going to stimulate formation of the CL. That'll be a short cycle, but she will start to cycle at that point. And I've had some limited effect with that. But the cedar, you're looking at a 60 to 80% induction rate with the cedars. And one thing on these really short postpartum cows, you put the cedar in, you pull the cedar out, you might not see heat, but they've ovulated. Okay. I mean, I've scanned them, they've ovulated, um, and they get pregnant in the first 30 days. They might not get pregnant right now, but they get pregnant in the first 30 days.
Next question is typical calving season period 60, 90, or 120 days?
120 is what the USDA research showed that 60% of cattle producers calve over 120 over a 4 month window. What's recommended by the economists is 70 days plus or minus. You could squeeze that out to 90, but honestly, dealing with those doggone late calvers is a pain in the rear. Stick with 60 to 70 and you'll be pretty happy.
Um, if injectable hormones are not being used, is the cedar use alone effective? And then in parentheses, it has lower percent estrus or conception.
So yeah, a great question, Sharon. I've actually figured out how to pull the question and answer box up now. So um, we purposely left the shots off because I don't want every single cow in heat in one day. I really just want to treat the anestrus cows because, in my opinion, let's pretend conception rate is 60 to 70%. If a cow is cycling, that means they've got a 60 to 70% chance at every heat to get pregnant. So in the first 40 days, at worst, those cows have a 90% chance of getting pregnant. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about the cows that aren't coming in heat. And that's what the cedar does. And so I don't give prostaglandin and GnRH on purpose. I don't want them all in heat in the same 2 or 3 day window for my bull. I want it to be spread out. And I want the sick cows to have an opportunity to get pregnant early in the breeding season.
Can you touch on the pregnancy tests? You talked about the blood, but can you also use them in milk? And do they work in goats?
Oof. You've pushed beyond my expertise. I believe the progesterone milk test will be okay if you want to get in there and milk your beef cow. But I've not used it, so I don't have any personal experience. If anyone in the dairy that's used that's on here can pipe in and answer that. And they do have goat um, uh, tests for pregnancy. I've actually used the beef ones in yaks, and it works in yaks as well. So there are tests available. If anybody else in the group knows about the milk tests for progesterone, let me know.
I haven't personally used them. Anybody else on the call? Have you guys used them? I'll take the silence as no. Does not giving the PGF2 alpha at the end of the CEDAR or MGA allow natural service bulls more opportunity to service the cows?
Yes, it does. It decreases the percentage of cow. So if you give a single shot of lute to cycling cows, you get about 70% of them in heat. I don't want those in heat right then. Okay. Now, if I've just got 12 total cows in one bull, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay. The average bull can breed 11 cows a day. Okay. If you look at the data from Australia and so forth. So a single bull with very small herds can do that. But, I'm typically um, looking at extending the number of cows in estrus over a period of days instead of condensing it. I just want them in heat early if I can. Oh, look at that. Dr. Kinder.
Did some modeling studies at UNL many years ago and was surprised at the value of having a relatively larger percentage of cows in herds aged 4 to 7 years. What are your thoughts regarding this value if there is not consideration for increasing the genetic base in younger cows through strategic selection?
Yeah, my biggest thought on that, Jim, is our cows actually begin to pay for themselves between their fourth and fifth year of age. And and they start getting less effective at being economically viable at 10. So I want to and for me, when I'm out working with herds, those are the optimum cows to influence. I can always get them to do what I need them to do. And so I love those 4 to 7 year old cows. I hate 2 year olds. I think everybody else in the world hates 2 year olds. I can stomach them because of the cedar, but if you're not using cedar devices in Kentucky, you're stuck with 60% preg rates, and that's not profitable. And we have a very very limited opportunity to get them pregnant. And so the genetic base, I mean, reproductive traits are lowly heritable. And so I personally think we make more progress controlling estrus than we do controlling the genetics, if that makes sense, Dr. Kenter. And by the way, Jim was one of my idols back in the day, so I'm happy to see him on there.
Next question is a good follow up. Do you think that using one fixed timed AI and then turning the bull out would increase profitability even in small ranches, considering genetic gain and pregnancy rate?
Absolutely. One round of fixed time to AI is phenomenal. And right now we have sex sorted semen. So you can choose the cows that you want to generate replacements from. You can produce steers out of cows that are on the bottom end. There's so many things you can do with fixed time to AI right now that's beyond what we thought 20 years ago. And so incorporating fixed time to AI is an economically viable um, short term and long term tool for producers to use.
In your discussion on your cedar protocols, did you give Ludulase or a PGF2 alpha when you pulled the cedar?
I did not.
Okay.
Just Again, the whole focus was the anestrus cows, and prostaglandin doesn't do a thing in an anestrus cow.
Can the cedar be used 2 times?
Another trick question. The official answer is no. Um, but I know people that go against the label and wash them and in natural service situations have used them up to 3 times. But again, that's not what we recommend. So, um, yeah, I know a large portion of the industry does reuse the cedar. But I can tell you for a fact, I've been on a farm with about 200 cows and they did not wash them and disinfect them before they reinserted them. And it ruined that farm. Okay, I'm serious. So there are uterine infections everywhere. I went in because obviously they were having trouble, and it was gross. It was gross. So if you do consider reusing them, make sure that that you wash them and disinfect them, or take them into your veterinarian and have them autoclaved. Lots of research that show autoclaved um, is a viable method to disinfect the cedars. Brian said, any of these farms you worked with breed the heifer 21 days earlier than the cows? That's a great question. I absolutely recommend some jumpstart calving, um, but most of the time we don't do that because our cattlemen really want to limit the number of times and we have a limited number of pastures. And so we use the cedar device to avoid that, if that makes any sense. Almost everything that I presented tonight, we did not do jumpstart calving. Okay. And there are a ton of research and there's a lot of reasons to do it, but it doesn't work for a lot of the people that I work with, if that makes any sense at all. Um, Tommy Bennett, do the two shoot side pregnancy test work as well as taking the blood sample and sending to the veterinary service. I haven't seen the data, but my personal experience is it works just as well. Now we in Kentucky we have an incredible lab, dependable livestock testing, and that lab does a phenomenal job. And so to say that the shoot side's better than them is rough. But we've used the shoot side here thousands of times now, and I'm very happy with both products. Barry Addison, have you used the Super Sync protocol before? Um, I don't know what Super Sync is. If you're talking about Resync, where we're using the double AI protocols, I use that all the time. But you might have to type in there and tell me what you consider super sync is. Jim Arman, one of the guys that I work with, is Cisterellin useful when doing AI versus the bull? Absolutely, Cisterellin in cows, Jim, that have not shown any signs of estrus is vital to get that cow to ovulate and to have an opportunity to get pregnant. Let's see, Ken Hoyt. There are lab-based milk tests. Yes, I just don't know if the lab-based milk tests are very effective. Dr. Kinder, great to see you again. And I do recall that not all reproductive traits are lowly heritable, and actually, age of puberty and our ability to crossbreed really impact that, and really impact our ability to shift lifetime productivity. Sydney Hill, what is the best way to go about talking to a producer to preg check earlier rather than later in order to determine embryo calves and recipients versus natural service? As an embryologist, we can't help troubleshoot. Embryo pregnancy rates are low and we don't know until a year later. Man, that's a tough question there. Um, make it as easy as you can for them. I mean, these particularly at day 28 and above, these chute side tests are pretty simple. Maybe step them through it one time, show them how to do it. And so if they come in, 21 days after you put the embryo in, that'll be day 28, right? They'll get a very viable test. Sometimes on day 28, those lines are very, very, very thin, or very faint. But any red in that test line is a pregnancy. And, you know, maybe even provide them the test. It's $7, you know, and then step them through it, and maybe that'll help. I don't know where you're at, but in Kentucky, we have some pretty big regions here that don't have very many large animal veterinarians, and so these chute side tests are becoming pretty important for for our producers to get pregnancy determinations done. With fixed time to AI, what should the time interval be between that and release of the cleanup bulls? If the producer wants to know calf identity, depends on if you're doing um, ultrasonography. If you're doing ultrasonography, I don't mind them turning bulls out 7 to 10 days after AI. Okay. We can get plus or minus 4 or 5 days using an ultrasound, but hand palpation is much more difficult. And the main thing is consult with your veterinarian. If your veterinarian is really, really um, good, and they're very confident and accurate between 10-day window, just go right off of what your herd veterinarian feels comfortable doing. Okay. But typically when we do um, when we do the turning out the cleanup bulls, I wait until I do 7 to 10 days because I ultrasound everything. Ronnie Holman, fertility is mildly heritable, lowly heritable in most cases, but we are potentially masking less fertile cows. Yeah, we have actually talked about this considerably with our geneticist over here, Dr. Dare Bullock, and several other geneticists about that. And you do mask low, very lowly heritable traits. Um, I mean, where it comes down to me is I need to make money this year in addition to 20 years from now. Okay. And so if the cedar or MGA or something can help me make money this year, it'll probably still be effective 20 years from now. And yes, I will have affected fertility slightly over that long period of time, but I need to make money this year. And that's probably a terrible answer to that. But that's the way I think about it. And then anonymous attendee, uh, is there any reason not to turn a bull in hours after AI is done? Nope. Matter of fact, select sires used to actually recommend to pull the cedar, give loot, turn the bull in, and then go ahead and AI them a couple of days later, like we normally do, 66 hours. And, you can genetic test them. And actually, that if you're really looking to maximize pregnancy rate early in the breeding season and get a few AI sired calves, that's a phenomenal system. I mean, it's phenomenal because not only does the bull service several cows, but you've got the male present. And Dr. Kinder, if you're still on, I mean, he did a lot of this male work, the male presence of the male work way back in the 80s. But that male, the bull present will help stimulate a tighter, stronger estrus. And so you're going to get a really strong estrus response. And then there's also a little bit of theory that if you have competing sperm, you improve pregnancy rate. And that goes back to Phil Jux's old work. And then a lot of the beef on dairy stuff is kind of designed around that too, where they're putting 3 or 4 sires in the same straw. Part of that is risk mitigation, but the other part is Jacques' old theory on competition for fertilization. And he didn't really have any proof for that, but it was really kind of a neat theory, and absolutely heterozygote inseminations in gilts improved litter size by half a pig a litter. And so it was pretty significant way back in the day, but we don't have any data on that in cattle, but it's kind of fun to think about.
Well, I apologize that my computer had a small glitch. Thanks, technology. um, but thank you, Dr. Anderson, for a wonderful webinar this evening and taking the time to answer a lot of questions. We really, really appreciate you staying up and logging on with us this evening.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So just a reminder to everybody, this webinar is recorded. It'll be posted in the next few weeks on our beefrepro.org website, as well as on our YouTube channel. So thanks and have a great evening.